The people building the most powerful technology in human history are genuinely terrified of what they're building. Not as a PR stunt, not as a thought experiment, as a daily lived fear. And they're building it anyway. And once you understand why, you'll never look at your AI tools the same way again. In the next 8 minutes, you'll learn why the race to build AI is less like a tech competition and more like a game of mutually assured destruction. How two rival labs accidentally handed the world something nobody was ready for, and the one insight Parmy Olsen buries near the end of this book that the entire industry is desperately hoping you don't notice. Let's get into it. Chapter 1: The Race Nobody Wanted to Lose. The first thing that surprised me was this: the people most convinced that AI could destroy civilization were also the people sprinting to build it first. Parmy Olsen opens supremacy by pulling back the curtain on two organizations, OpenAI and DeepMind, that were supposed to be the responsible adults in the room. Both were founded on the idea that AI needed to be developed carefully, slowly, with humanity's best interests at the center. DeepMind's own co-founder helped shape the book's framework around what Olsen calls the containment problem, the question of what happens when the technology outgrows the institutions meant to govern it. But here's the tension she captures almost immediately. The moment one lab showed meaningful progress, every other lab abandoned caution and hit the accelerator, not because they stopped believing in the risks, but because they believed the alternative, someone less careful getting there first, was even worse. It's a collective action trap, and it explains almost everything that happens next. But here's where it gets interesting, because the second idea completely contradicts the image these companies spent years building in public. Chapter 2: The Myth of the Responsible Lab. So the second big idea is that the safety-first branding of these AI labs was, at best, aspirational, and at worst, a strategic fiction. Olsen is meticulous here. She's not a conspiracy theorist. She's a Financial Times journalist who got inside access to the key players. And what she documents is the gap between what these organizations said about safety and what their internal culture actually rewarded. Think of it like a pharmaceutical company that genuinely believes it's developing life-saving medicine, while also knowing the clinical trials were rushed. The belief is sincere. The outcome is still dangerous. What makes this stick is her reporting on the launch of ChatGPT specifically. OpenAI released it almost as an experiment, a demo, internally. The response was so overwhelming, so immediate, that the organization lost control of the narrative before they even had one. 100 million users in 2 months. Nobody had a plan for that. And the race at that point became something else entirely. And this sets up what I think is the most important insight in the whole book. Chapter 3: The Containment Problem. This is the core of supremacy, and it's the reason the book won the Financial Times Business Book of the Year. The containment problem isn't just a technical question, it's a civilizational one. Olsen frames it simply: what happens when a technology becomes so useful, so embedded, so economically critical, that the cost of slowing it down exceeds the cost of the risks it creates? At that point, containment isn't really on the table anymore. You're not governing the technology is governing you through market incentives, geopolitical pressure, and the simple human desire not to be the one who fell behind. She draws on the history of DeepMind to make this visceral. DeepMind was acquired by Google in 2014 with explicit promises of an independent ethics board and guardrails against weaponization. Within years, those promises had quietly eroded under the weight of commercial reality, not through malice, through the ordinary pressure of operating inside one of the most competitive businesses on earth. There's a line Olsen returns to in various forms. Throughout the book, the people best positioned to slow this down have the most to lose by doing so. That's not cynicism. That's just the structure of the incentive system we built. I didn't fully believe this framing when I started the book, but the evidence she layers chapter by chapter is hard to argue with. This isn't a story about bad actors. It's a story about a system that makes good actors behave in dangerous ways. Now, before I tell you the last piece, I want to show you how all three of these ideas actually lock together. Chapter 4: The part nobody talks about. Here's the nuance that separates Supremacy from every other AI book on the shelf right now, and it's the part most reviews gloss over. Olson doesn't end with doom, and she doesn't end with optimism. She ends with something more uncomfortable: agency. Her argument, stripped to its core, is that the containment problem is real, but it's not unsolvable. What's missing isn't the technical solution. What's missing is the political will to treat AI like we treat other civilizational risks: nuclear weapons, pandemics, financial contagion. We built international frameworks for those. Imperfect, slow, frustrating frameworks, but frameworks that exist. We haven't done that for AI, and the window to do it is narrowing. The part nobody wants to say out loud is this: the labs can't solve this problem. The market can't solve this problem. The only institution with the legitimacy and reach to govern something this consequential is government. And right now, most governments are moving at the speed of a 2010 understanding of a 2025 technology. That's the hidden argument of this book, and it's why it matters beyond the tech world. Which brings me to the one thing this book is actually asking you to do. So here's what Supremacy actually comes down to: the race to build. I wasn't won or lost by the smartest engineers. It was shaped by the institutions that failed to keep up with it. If you take nothing else away, take that. Most people will read this book, nod along, and assume someone else is handling it. But Olson's reporting makes clear that the someone else doesn't exist yet. The framework hasn't been built. The governance is still mostly theater. You now know that, which means you're no longer a passive observer of this story. The author has one more book worth pairing with this. I'll cover that next. But start here. Supremacy is the clearest account we have of how we got to this moment, and why the next few years will define everything that follows.